Hey, how are you doing? I'm Vasco Duarte, your host on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, and I've got some exciting news. So, right now, as I record this, I'm holding in my hand the signed contract for our very first Global Agile Summit. We're all in, and I couldn't wait to share this news with you. So mark your calendars, May 18th to 20th of 2025 in Tallinn, Estonia. We're going to have a transformative experience. We're putting together an event that it's all about real-life Agile. It's not theory or buzzwords. It's practitioners sharing what's working, what's making an impact, and how they've overcome challenges that you too will have to face, or maybe even facing right now. We're bringing together the best stories in Agile, from product leaders to engineering wizards to business visionaries. These will be stories that will inspire you to action. This isn't just another conference. It's a chance to connect with the people that are shaping the future of Agile. And here's the best part. Right now, we're in our super early bird phase. And that means you can grab tickets at just 25% of the final price. Look, that's not just half off. It's half off of the half off. It's an incredible deal for our dedicated community members, just like you, listening to this right now. So at the summit, day one will be all about hands-on workshops. And days 2 and 3 will dive into leadership, product strategy, coding, testing, and everything that makes Agile thrive in organizations right now. Remember, these are all first-person, real-life stories. Now, whether you're a leader, a developer, or part of a consulting company, this event is built to take your Agile game to the next level. So don't wait. Go to globalagilesummit.com and grab your ticket today. Let's all make 2025 the year Agile truly transforms your teams, your business, and our industry. I'll see you all in Tallinn. And remember, go to globalagilesummit.com and get your super early bird ticket right now. It will only be available until the agenda is announced. So don't wait. Grab it right now. Right, now that that's out of the way, on to the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday. This week we have with us Ville Reijonen. Hey, Ville. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasco.
So, Ville, and by the way, it feels good to know how to pronounce somebody's name. I mean, it doesn't often happen here on the podcast. It's great to have a Finn here because that name I can pronounce. All right, Ville, we'll talk about teams in a second because it is Team Tuesday here on the podcast. But first, let's dive into the book that most inspired you in your role as a Scrum Master.
It's not necessarily the book influence, but I would recommend in this phase. I would say Peter Drucker Essential Collection would be something I would read, and why is probably tells it why it is so. So a while back, as a student at university, I had this course called Management of Innovation, and it was a business case course. There was a lot of different kind of innovation dilemmas and business situations handled on this course, and they had this other book from Peter Drucker called Innovation and Entrepreneurship on the course. And you could call Drucker as some kind of management philosophist. So probably his most cited definition is this: that the purpose of business is to create a customer and keep it. Well, that's not verbatim, but quite close to that one. And that sentence has already quite a lot in that one. So create a customer and keep the customer. So that's, you have to have your antennas on the market and see what's happening and listen to customer to keep it. You can dwell on this sentence quite a long time already. So Deming was working a lot of in Japan also, and so I wouldn't necessarily say this innovation entrepreneurship book would be something you would read, but the collection would be better because he has published quite a few books, and I think there's a lot of people, product owners, Scrum Master, which are not so aware of this side of the business and management. And I think it would be beneficial to think about the big picture and especially this relationship with the customers and markets.
Yeah, and it's essential to think about the big picture, as you said. So great recommendations, Essential Collection by Peter Drucker. And I'm sure that if you're interested in any management topic, you will find something from Peter Drucker on that topic. So check out his bibliography as well. Right, Ville. So now we dive into the team story. Now we want to work or learn about a team that kind of started developing a set of patterns. I bet you like that, or behaviors that eventually over time took a life of their own and caused big problems for the team. So tell us that story first. We'll dive into the takeaways later, but how did that, that set of behaviors or patterns develop over time? Tell us that story.
So one kind of destructive pattern necessarily doesn't, it's existing condition often already in the system, which is kind of ownership of a part of the system. As a pattern, it repeats on multiple layers. It can be a person who owns a part of the system, or it can be a team which owns a part of the system. And then you talk about component teams, which is kind of common topic usually. But this individual level, this same pattern also occurs, and it can be so that each person in a team owns a part of a system. And often you are not allowed to touch some other part of the system. And it's not going to be ever a team. It's a group of people working somewhat together. You might put a label on it, top of it, and it's a team. And you might do planning together, but nobody else is interested what other people are doing because they have their own part of the system. So it's total failure.
Was that the case for this particular team that you were working with? Was it that each individual owned a part of the code and nobody else was allowed to touch that?
That kind of system I have seen, and that there's often a lot of fear accompanied with that setup. People are afraid first to kind of show what they have inside their own box. It's all black box kind of, and they're afraid if somebody else touches that thing, what will happen with it. So they are. It requires a lot of work to kind of the people to create the trust to open up and show the stuff and start to kind of be willing to accept other people's code, other people's ideas.
All right, so the pattern is clear. Let's dive into those strategies that we could use to start building that trust, because you said it requires a lot of work to build the trust between the team members, and that makes a lot of sense. But how do we start doing that? Like in your experience, what has worked and what have you tried in order to try to build trust within a team that is, as you said, owning completely different parts of the code and maybe even afraid that others will come and destroy their part of the code?
So when we talk about software, typical thing with this kind of issue is also that there's no tests or lack of testing or minimal testing. So the system might actually break because you don't see it. So the one person is really expert for that part of the system. So the first layer would be kind of always add whatever is created is created with tests. So you start layering tests on top of the system. So you have more certainty that it doesn't break and it's less likely to break. So that's kind of one way of creating the system which you can believe in some higher level.
Oh, okay, so what you're saying is we need to create a set of tests, maybe even at first manual, perhaps, like just to design them, then automate them. We need to create a set of tests that builds trust in those who own the code, that others can come in, change things, and the code will not break itself, right?
Yes. Other parties kind of like that this person who has been owning the part of the system earlier is the reviewer for every change that comes in. So there's kind of learning possibility and learning feedback loop created in that kind of. So peer reviewing of all the contributions. So that's other way of creating that kind of trust.
And
So,
that would be similar to what in Linux they call the maintainers, right? Like anyone can change any part of the code, but before it gets accepted, somebody will go through the change and will validate that, yes, the change does follow whatever rules we have, and it seems to work according to what has been declared that it would work like, and so on and so forth.
So what is usually typical, you have additional force in this system often, that the management is wishing that there's still features coming out, and adding tests and peer reviewing his code will slow you down. So what you have to create is also understanding in the management that this is necessary step to do. You will probably slow down, and it will take some time before you will speed up, but you will speed up after doing this one. And you will have actually a system which has less risks, because if that one person is hit by the bus, the classic bus factor, then you will be totally screwed. But this will reduce the risk.
Yeah, and what we are talking about here is moving from what is segregated or separated code ownership into a shared code ownership. And some people would even call this the internal open source model, right? Where you still have clear owners, you still have review and kind of a vetting process for all changes, but anyone in the organization can suggest a change, do a pull request, for example, and then that gets reviewed and approved, and then it gets into the final code, right?
Yes, and next step, maybe further on the way, would be shared ownership, but maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But already when people can change the other part of the system, it has much higher impact on the. You don't need to wait for somebody else. You can do it yourself. If you need something, do it yourself, and the delays and wait times are diminished in that way. So actually the progress might be much faster already in that sense.
Yeah, well, one would say that the segregated code ownership also creates slowness, right? Because you're inherently designing the system around explicit and deliberate bottlenecks, right? Because, one person can only do one thing at one time. And then if they have to do everything, then their queues that form. So they become bottlenecks. One would argue that a shared code ownership model, initially, for example, through code reviews, and then later on through automated testing, CD and CI, or CI and CD, would quite quickly yield faster throughput of user stories and features. Is that your experience, or am I seeing this wrong?
Yes. That I've seen also. It's the bottlenecks. Single person or single team being the bottleneck is often which is delaying the whole implementation of whole system, whatever is going to be implemented. So yeah. When the bottleneck is somewhere else than in a single component, then you usually go faster already.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I think we should refer to here is a book that I'm sure you've read and many of our listeners read, but I'll mention it again, Team Topologies, that tries to tackle these different setups. There's also a great book by, I forget the name now, but I'll put it in the show notes. It's Agile Software Development Patterns, I believe is the book, where the authors review a bunch of not just team setup, but team setup being one, and other patterns related to the Scrum Master role and so on that allow us to kind of act deliberately on a system, right? Like to look at the system not just as a collection of individuals, which it ultimately is, but also from a slightly higher perspective or slightly higher abstraction level, using the concept of patterns, which you like so much, and create designs for, in this case, we were talking about shared code ownership. So patterns for shared code ownership are in those books that we can then use and think about complete like implementation solutions, right? Like these patterns are more or less kind of self-descriptive and contained, so you can go and implement that rather than try to develop small changes over time that eventually lead to one of those patterns. So I guess it's kind of a superpower to have, to know about those patterns. So I would definitely recommend team topologies and agile software development patterns. How about you, Ville? Do you have another book that you think people should know about?
I think this also one thing in this case is like how the people can learn from other people. I think pair programming is some very powerful method to actually learn and to feel safe. Of course, that's a skill which you have to learn, or you can necessarily you can have 3 people doing it, or you have a whole team doing it together. It's the same thing. There's the what is called ensemble programming.
Ensemble programming, which is the new name. It's called mob programming for those of us who heard about it early on.
Yes. So that's the way kind of create understanding on the system for multiple people and feel safe same time about the changes.
All right.
Might be something additional done with the testing and reviewing, or it can replace the review.
Absolutely. We'll put the link to all of those resources in the show notes, so do check them out. Ville, thank you very much for sharing that story with us.
Thank you.
We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.